Welcome to my second session. I hope that my voice holds out for y'all. So I'm going to start by saying that I'm not Ukrainian. I have never been to Ukraine. The people who are really in the thick of working with Ukraine are not able to just come and be here. But I've been a witness to a lot. I've been a witness to thousands of Ukrainians that have come through Estonia, through Russia. I've been a witness to a lot of refugees. I've been a witness to Ukrainians who have lived in Estonia for years and how they've stepped up to help their fellow countrymen. And you'll also see pictures today of Ukrainians who have, for less than a year, had to start over from nothing in a new country. And yet they're not only doing that, but they're also helping others who are less fortunate than them to help them as well. And so that's what you'll be hearing about today. So this picture here, the blue sunflower, someone asked me, blue sunflowers, what's that? Well, the sunflower, since 1996, has been a symbol of peace in Ukraine. I read the history. You can Google it later if you want to know all the details. But sunflowers are not native to Ukraine, but after the fall of the Iron Curtain, sunflowers were planted to signify peace when Ukraine gave up its nuclear powers. And since the attack on Russia, it's been a symbol for peace in Ukraine, again, renewed. And this picture you see up here is a florist artistic representation of Ukraine. You'll see the charcoal and the ashes, but then you'll also see the flowers that represent their country and in their flag colors. And I saw this and it just really stuck with me, and so I wanted to share that with you guys. So the attack on Ukraine happened in February, very close to the Independence Day of Estonia, February of last year. There were already thousands of Ukrainians living in it. It's important to know, I don't have my map in this one, so you might have to look on a map to understand, but Ukraine is just 3 countries south of Estonia, and just we all kind of border Russia on the eastern side. A lot of people are intermarried. A lot of people are cousins. A lot of people are related to each other. And so not only has this been devastating as far as a country, but also because eastern Ukraine is largely ethnically Russian. Their first language is Russian. And so just to help you give a little bit of context about that. So last February, after the attack, there was a lot of awareness. Here you have some Ukrainian men wrapped in their flag just to spread awareness to Estonians. This is our town square in Estonia. There's an ice skating rink. There's a Christmas market. There's thousands of people that walk through here a day. And they wanted people to know what had happened. At the time, there's a lot of controversy. Did it happen? Did it not happen? If you reported the attack, you could be blacklisted from Russia. Estonian news was blacklisted from Russia because they reported the attack. Estonia immediately showed solidarity for Ukraine. You see here, this is our main walking bridge in the entire city. And the day after the attack, they already had it lit up in the Ukrainian flag. Within a week of the attack, they sent an entire refugee camp down, cots, sheets, blankets, tents, food to Ukraine. For the people where I live, it was not a matter of if, but when this would happen. Since 91, they've been preparing for this. Obviously, they have too. So it's been in the works for a long time. But to see Estonians immediately act, immediately start collecting supplies, they would take buses full of supplies, drive it down to Ukraine, which is between 12 and 16 hours by bus, approximately. They would drive the buses down full of supplies, drop off the stuff, and bring people back. Why? Because a lot of Estonians lived in Ukraine. And so anyone who had a claim to Estonia, who was married to an Estonian, who had a residency, who had a citizenship, they wanted to make sure that they could evacuate their people, but also that they could leave supplies for those who were there. Very quickly, within a month or two, they opened up a school in Tallinn. They started having disaster relief centers. They started raising scholarships for Ukrainians, displaced Ukrainians, to come study at the university in Tartu. I live in a university town of 95,000. Half of the school is in Estonian, half of the school is in English. And so many people come from all over the world to study in English. And so they were raising scholarships for that. The thing about the patch, you see up there is that picture is not from months ago, like the rest of these pictures. That patch is a month ago. When I took the Tallinn from the city where I live, the bus from the city where I live to the capital, which is 2.5 hours, there was a soldier on that bus who still has this in support of Ukraine tag. So he's an Estonian soldier, but you still see today in all of the Baltic countries, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, the Ukrainian flag everywhere. Artistically in signs. I didn't put the video up because it's a little bit graphic and I didn't know quite what the audience would be, but the Russian embassy in Estonia, there's like a 30-foot long fence, and it is plastered with candles and signs. Ever since the week of the attack, it was been covered in signs, stop the war, and talking about, all symbols for peace or condemnation for violence. And so these all happened very quickly. And a lot of Americans, I think, felt helpless. How can we help? What can we do? I know Sunset has done lots of things. You heard the president this morning talk about a lot of the things that they have done. But I want you to know some of the other things that are happening in Estonia. You know that crates have gone over. You've heard the stories. You've seen the Facebook posts. But this year at the workshop, I'm the person who's been at least close to there and has come back to share personally about those things. So one of the things that was happening, the ways that people were helping, I want you to know not just the devastation that's happened, but all the amazing ways that people have helped. Not all Christian people, but the way that many, many people have risen up to the call. And because I volunteered with them, got to have conversations about why I help these people. Not only am I representing Christianity in this atmosphere, I'm also representing America. In this center you see here, it's called Ekrani Keskus. Ekran in Estonian means screen. It used to be a movie theater. It was a movie theater that closed down during COVID. And the owner of this building gave it up, volunteered it, and paid all of the utilities for the several months that we used it as a disaster relief center. And then they started collecting supplies. So they already had some supplies from the buses. And after they were able to evacuate several busloads full of people, then they took out all the seats. And in the bottom picture, you can actually see some of the seats. They took out the seats and they put in clothing racks. The city of Tartu bought all of these clothing things. And volunteers started coming in to help. There were volunteers from Russia. There were volunteers from Ukraine. There were many, many, many volunteers from Estonia. One volunteer from Poland. Another one, I think, from Germany. And we all came together to volunteer at this place. I was the only American there, which was really interesting for them. So the thing you also should know, like I said, Eastern Ukraine is mostly Russian-speaking. There's about a 30% Russian-speaking population in Estonia. And so a lot of Ukrainians who came up north to Estonia, but there were also many that were forced to evacuate through Russia back into the Baltic states. And so they had to take that very long trip up and over and then back south again. So not only did they get out this way, but they went all the way back down to Poland and Hungary and the things you heard about this morning. So most of them speak Russian. I do not speak Russian. So how can I help these people? How can I share Jesus with them? How can I help relieve their pain? Now, if you remember, I was here last March. So I was here for 3 weeks, and it's like, I'm here, and I'm happy to be here, but also all of this is happening back home, and I'm not there to help. So the moment I got back, very, very quickly after I got back, I started volunteering there. When I was here, I had some friends and family members write me checks. They said, hey, you're closer than we are. Can we send you money, and you go buy stuff for Ukrainians? And so this picture is the first of many donations that me and my teammate were able to go shopping. We went to the center. They were posting on Facebook lists of what they needed, and we just went on a shopping spree and just bought whatever we could for them. And then when I brought the donation, I started volunteering there. Guys, all I did was move hangers. In my mind, the Ukrainians are the heroes. You heard the story of many other people. In Poland, you'll see a picture of Molly here in a minute, who leads up that ministry. But I got to see these people, people of strength who have been through a lot, but they're stubborn and they're strong and they are very hard-working people. There was one day I was hanging up clothes, and I'm wearing my name tag. I'll show you. This was my name tag there And I think my hair is just dark enough they assumed that I spoke Russian, or maybe thought if I was there that I spoke Russian. And I know enough of Russian to say I don't speak Russian in Russian, which confuses them. But you just said, oh, okay. So I wrote on my name tag in Estonian that I speak English and Estonian. But still people would come up, and I wanted to help them, but I didn't have the language skills. But they always had me paired. So every single shift, they had the volunteers paired where there was one Russian speaker or Ukrainian speaker and one English/Estonian speaker. And so we worked together, and if someone asked me a question, I would just bring them to the nearest, and then I'd be like, and walk away. One day, there were a whole bunch of people. They had taken the clothes they wanted. They'd taken the things, and they were just talking. And they were getting louder, and they were getting louder, and and sometimes people would complain. They couldn't find the thing they wanted. And I can imagine, if you've had everything taken from you, you want to come and you want to take what you need, and maybe more because you've had so much taken from you. And I was a little bit scared, like, why are they yelling? Why are they getting so loud? And the Russian speaker next to me said they're telling their story of how they escaped. And they were just really emotional about it. They weren't angry, they weren't mad, they weren't complaining, but they were just telling what happened. I didn't know that it would become a grief share place, but that happens sometimes. People would come through and they would take things that they needed, but they would also share their stories with each other and talk to each other. I couldn't understand what they were saying, but I could see the compassion, the anger, and also the love they had for each other. I'll get to that in a minute. So as I volunteered there, I did a lot of clothes. I couldn't really do a lot of talking with the people, so I mostly worked in just getting things up. I would encourage the volunteers. The Estonian volunteers are really heartbroken over it. I, of course, didn't like it, but for them, this is like their sister country. And to see their sister hurting and to see their sister in pain was so devastating for the volunteers. And so just letting them talk and hearing from them in the break room and hearing them share, and even the Ukrainians who have lived there for years, but they're like, I have to help my people. And there was one lady, she was volunteering. I don't have a picture of it, but we had like in the old days when you had to go order what you wanted from the counter at the store. We had this for the personal care items. And she was working there every day, and she was one of the hardest working volunteers. But she didn't speak English. But I would say hello and whatever, and I found out one day that she herself was a Ukrainian refugee. But she had come back, and she volunteered there every single day to make sure people got deodorant, shampoo, conditioner, all of that. The ladies up here are some of the leaders. The young lady there isn't even out of high school yet, and she was already doing all of the computer setups for the scheduling. The other lady worked for the city, but she would give so many volunteer hours to this place. It was entirely voluntary. It wasn't run by an organization. It wasn't run by a church. It was just a bunch of people who came together who wanted to help. But as one of the few Christians there, I got to share why I was there helping, which intrigued a lot of people. This children's drawing, now we closed the center, and that's a good thing, because we went from having thousands of Ukrainians come through a day to now just hundreds. But when the numbers were the highest, we were supposed to close in the spring, but we had to stay open until about July, maybe even later. It was later. We had our ending party in the fall, actually. And so this place was open for a while, and then eventually it wasn't needed as much. And that was a good thing, because it meant there weren't as many refugees coming through. But this picture was on the column, and I thought this kid just captured perfectly the love that Estonia and Ukraine have for each other. It says in Estonian, it says Estonia helps Ukraine, or Ukrainians. I can't quite make it. But this love that they have for each other and this sisterhood. I went to a camp in Lithuania, and one of the ladies shared with me that we're different countries, but we're the same people. I don't feel like we're Lithuania and they're Ukraine. We're the same, and when they're hurting, we're hurting. And they would always say, I just can't wait until this is over. And so the picture there with the clothes, I was sorting children's clothes. Now, I'm not a mother. I have not worked a lot with children's clothes. I'm going to make it a little bit light here for a minute. I don't know if you know this about Europe, but their children's clothes are not in years. They're in centimeters. So I was working with this lady from Russia who had come to help, and she was a mother, and so I was asking her, like, this one, and then pointing, and she'd point to the right box. And then she left, and I sorted that whole stack behind me. I sorted that day. I haven't looked at children's clothes since. There was a whole box full of them that didn't have tags, and so I was just comparing them, like, which are you 158 or 140? Are you 120? I don't know what centimeter you are. And so there was also some fun times, and we had a lot of fun times. Us volunteers, we were always trying to make it light. We knew that the Ukrainians coming through, their hearts were heavy, and so we always tried to be as kind as we could, as nice as we could, and we were always up to one shenanigan or another. But it helped make the atmosphere light in a time of seriousness, and it helped put smiles on the faces of the Ukrainians. Oh, the picture behind all of these pictures is the name tags of the volunteers. When I first started volunteering there were only like 20 of us. But a few months later, I came in and they had all the name tags of the volunteers. There were well over 100. So the desire to help and serve was huge. I am not the hero of this story. This is not just about me. This is stuff that I've been a witness to. This is the stuff that I have seen the amazing people that can do a lot more than I can because they have the resources, they have the language skills, they have the ability. And that's what these pictures are all about. Now, you guys heard about the work in Poland this morning if you were in the opening session. They had thousands of Ukrainians come through this little church building. This was she was American, married, I think, a guy from Poland, Molly. I met her at the European Vision Workshop in Rome, and she shared there her story about the meals, about the bedding. Now, they have a church building that had a few bedrooms. They lived in the church building. Her husband built it and had passed. And when Ukrainians wanted to get back closer to Ukraine and back down to the south and probably as far from Russia as possible, they opened up the church that was also their home. They put in beds, they put in bunk beds, in her presentation, she had picture after picture. They were feeding thousands of meals a day. They had hundreds of people living. They had people sleeping in all kinds of places. Church members were taking in Ukrainians in their homes. And she shared about all of that, about how they tried to accommodate so many people in such a small space, a comparative small space. And her daughter were working so hard. And even when they came to the workshop in October, they still had Ukrainians living with them. And they're like, we're here, but we have a lot of work to do when we get back. And so they were an inspiration to me. And even some of the refugees that came through Estonia ended up down with her. And then while we were at the workshop, they were over at our church retreat visiting the friends they had made in Tallinn. So the picture you see up here is the combination of the Church of Mariupol, the Church of Christ in Mariupol, and the Church of Christ in Tallinn. So they about doubled in size that day. There are about 30 members of the Church of Mariupol that were traveling through Tallinn that stayed there. The church helped them find transportation and things as they continued to go back down south. And it was amazing to see and to hear about not only churches in Europe, but churches in Russia helping them get out, helping them get safe, helping them get from one place to another. And then this church here is Russian-speaking, and so they were able to comfort and to love and to care for these people in a way that I can't, linguistically. And out of this large group of people, there were several families. I think most of them are from Mariupol, maybe some other villages nearby that ended up living in the church building. There were 4 families living, and you can see this church building is not very big. It's a 2-bedroom apartment. But there were 4 families living there at one time, and then 2. And again, you have Ukrainians who have lost everything and they come back to serve. 2 of the teenagers that were living in the church building came and served as camp counselors. Really good ones, by the way. They were amazing. They were so kind and so sweet. And Julie, she didn't speak English, I didn't speak Russian, but she really wanted to have a conversation with me. So she came up to me and she goes, da, 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 da. And I was like, da, da. And we couldn't talk, but we could have a good time together. And I have many memories like that where there's this unspoken love, this unspoken care between people, and to see that. We had a city camp. So we had Bachoka, which is a Russian-speaking camp. Then we had city camp, which I helped organize. And several people came down with COVID, including one of the mothers and her daughter living in the church building. And I think we were having a love-off competition, like who could love the other person more, because we had to cancel early and I had bought groceries and I couldn't take them home. And she was in the church building trying to make sure that she wasn't around anyone. So I came in and she's like, you shouldn't be here. I'm sick. I have COVID. You should go. By the way, this whole conversation was over Google Translate. Okay, let me preface that. And I said, hi, I wanted to make you some soup. She says, don't come in here. I'm sick. And I said, well, how about I go in the kitchen and have lunch and then I'll make you some soup. And she says, okay, but I don't want to make you sick. So she did not want to let me. And I was like, mm-mm. And she's like, mm-mm. So I eventually did. I said, okay, fine. I will stay. I will make soup. I will eat. I will leave. And then you can have soup. Because she was just so concerned about getting me sick. But I had already been exposed to the same children she had. So it was going to probably happen sooner or later. But it was amazing because I saw her a few months later at Christmas. And again, she doesn't speak English. I only know a few words of Russian. But when we saw each other, it was just a wonderful reunion to see her. And her husband and the other family that they still attend this church, they're, I think, brothers. Either the wives are sisters or the husbands are brothers. And all the kids are cousins. And they don't live in the church building anymore. They have jobs. They have homes. Several people that the church helped are not Christians, but they all come to church here because they've been helped, because they've been loved, because they've been cared for. And it was so amazing to me to see this Ukrainian man, and he was ready to be in the service, and you could tell, I mean, he was ready. He was all buttoned up, and he was good to go, and he was, ready to, I don't remember what he did in the service that day, but he wanted to contribute. He wanted to help. And so again, you see these people who have lost almost everything, and yet they are serving each other, they're serving others. They're building up the church in Tallinn. There's another man who is in the rotation for things now, and so that's been an inspiration to me. We had an LST team come from California, and I was volunteering at the Ukrainian Center. We were almost completely out of bedding. We didn't have bedding, we didn't have sheets, we didn't have blankets. A lot of people donated at the beginning, but it was already 3 months later, and it had just slowed down. People stopped giving as much, and those are the things that are more expensive and harder to find. We had all of the clothes, but not as much bedding. And one of the LST members said, hey, we always bring some extra funds. Now, they told me, not everyone does this. This is not part of the LST program, but this couple who had the gifts of generosity said, we would like to help with something. Do you know about something that we can help with? And I said, you know what? We're almost out of all these things. And they said, well, you know what? Why don't we give a call to our church and see if they'll match what we'll give? And so the next day we go shopping at this warehouse where they have all kinds of bedding. And he says, okay, we've doubled our budget, and we're going to go see what we can get with that. And we went in, and we got everything for 15 beds. Blankets, pillows, towels. We even got some cleaning supplies. We got toiletries for a bunch of people, like all kinds of stuff. And we went to go have it delivered, and they said, oh, we'll probably get delivered in the next day or so. And I said, hey, I volunteer at the center, and we're almost out. And we've got people lining outside of the door waiting for these things. We saw them on the bus on the way there. They were already waiting outside. And he said, well, let me talk to the manager about that. They immediately got it out. In fact, the delivery beat us there. Even the manager of this giant department store warehouse wanted to help and make sure that the Ukrainians had what they needed. The picture at the top is a camp in Lithuania. There were several people who told their stories in that camp. The two that I will talk a little bit about, I told you about Barb. She told how she feels like she's the same type of people. But this was churches, this was missionaries from all over Europe, a few other places. Missionary that had just left Russia because of hostility there. But there was a woman from Belarus, and there was a man from Mariupol who told their stories. The woman from Belarus, now in Estonia there was a lot of, I can't believe Belarus is siding with Russia. She told her story about her and her husband were part of a peaceful protest. And they were gassed and shot at with rubber bullets and put in jail and beaten for a peaceful protest. And after her husband got out of jail, she didn't know, will I see my husband again? Then they came to Lithuania and to be able to escape that. And I hadn't realized how far the reach was, that it wasn't just Ukrainians that were experiencing, difficulty. I don't have a picture, but I'll tell you some story about some Russian friends of mine. One, we met at a volunteer program, and she had left Russia years ago. She had already decided, I don't want to be here, I 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 want to be Every week she would go help make camouflage nets that they would send to Ukraine to disguise from the air. Different vehicles, different buildings. One other friend of mine that I'd known for several years, she said, I'm sorry, I'm moving. She said, my husband is part Israeli, and we're going to denounce our citizenship and move to Israel and be Israeli citizens. I found out just a few days ago that the Russian embassy in Estonia has taken so many renunciations of Russian citizenship that they have decided to no longer accept them. Russians who might have heard from some news source, Ukrainian news source, before everything was blacklisted, who were protesting, were also treated very badly. As I was coming to America in March, there was one American missionary in Russia. She had been getting letter after letter, email after email from the American embassy, get out, leave, go, don't stay there. And so many people, many missionaries, many of God's people had to leave Russia, especially if they weren't from there. What you see here, this Ukrainian flag, for those of you who don't know Latvian, sorry, it's a bad joke, but anyway, it says in Latvia, it's the Latvian Museum of War. And I was walking around Latvia that day, and I wish that it was still in the museum. I wish it was still in the museum. But now you have a modern Ukrainian flag for the present war on the Museum of War in Latvia. So there's been encouraging stories, there's been heavy stories, there's been, struggles, but there's also been so many people that have come to aid, so many people that have just cared and shared love. And so now for some of the good things, right? So that's some of the heavy, but let's talk about some of the good things. So EEM, of course, has been distributing books in Ukrainian and Russian. Most of the people are Russian-speaking, so it's been hard to get. They're constantly running out of the Russian materials. But I was able to get quite a few Ukrainian materials. And I was trying to find Ukrainians who liked the Bible, who would help me distribute these, and I couldn't find any. I'd asked them, one was a militant atheist, self-proclaimed. Another, I asked her, what's your view of the Bible from a scale of 1 to 10? And she said, 2. She's like, I'll help you if you need the translation, but not really into it. And anyway, but then I just said, well, I'll just Google Translate, I'll just post, and I'll find the people who either had to leave their Bibles at home because they couldn't bring them, or maybe now, because of everything that has happened, they want to know more. They want to read. They want to know if there's a God of comfort for them. I have to tell you a story. So this is from my floriculture class. It's a language class to help you learn Estonian. This is at the end of the class, but at the beginning of the class, we had 3 Ukrainians, someone from Taiwan, someone from China, someone from Iran, me, a girl from Russia, and an Estonian translator. Yes. And it was the first day, and it was the break. And there was this Iranian woman, and she started talking about her country. And I introduced myself to her, and she starts talking about Iran. And this was the same week that all of these mass killings were happening in Iran. And she'd lived in Estonia for a while. And she's, I'm from Iran, things are so bad right now. And she looks at me and she asks me in Estonian, do you believe in God? And I said, yes, I do. And she says in English, no, there's no God, there's only pain. There's no, I can't believe that. And then she looked at me and she apologized for saying that. And I realized where she comes from, you're not allowed to disagree. And I said, you're allowed to have a different opinion. In the words of Ray Young, you're allowed to be wrong. No, but so she's talking about this, and then this Ukrainian girl comes up, and she's just wanting to join in our conversation, and she starts telling her story, and she tells her story about how her older brother died on the front lines in Ukraine, how she escaped here, but how her parents were still in Ukraine because they didn't want to leave. To leave meant surrender to them. She hadn't heard from them in 3 days because they were without power and Wi-Fi. And she's like, and of all the things my mom could have sent me, when the Wi-Fi came back on, I got this stupid YouTube video. But you know what? At least I knew she was alive. And so to see this Ukrainian woman and this Iranian woman sharing their stories, yeah, it was a lot. But what was cool was this other Ukrainian girl in the green, she's in the green in the wreath picture, she didn't speak English. The teacher would speak Russian to them to help them understand, what we were doing. They were learning Estonian from the beginning. And so I didn't really get to talk to her. But then when I posted on Facebook and the Friends of Ukraine, Ukrainian Friends in Tartu, then she said, I saw you in this floriculture class. She could write English. I saw you in the floriculture class, and I've got 4 kids. And we had to leave Ukraine, and I love the Bible, but I couldn't bring mine with me. It was too heavy, and so she said, can I have one of every book you have? She said, I can't find anything in Ukrainian and Estonia, and I want my kids, to be able to know Jesus and their mother language. And she said, can you also give me a Bible in Russian? And I had some, so I said, of course. And she said, I didn't know that you were a Christian in the class, and I feel like you're really from God. And she's just messaging me all these things, and coming into that floriculture class, I had no idea. And I saw her a few months later at the food bank, and there was, again, this unspoken just love, and I see you. Is amazing. Okay, moving right along. So up here, this is the food bank crew I volunteer with. So Bella is from Taiwan, and she was my student a long time ago. She came back. We became friends again. She said, I just finished reading A Purpose-Driven Life, and I understand that I need to serve people. How can I serve here? How can I serve the church? How can I serve the community? And I said, you know what? I'm going to volunteer at the food bank because I finally knew enough Estonian that I could do so. The people there don't speak English. And I said, I'll be your translator. I'll translate from Estonian to English for you. We'll volunteer together. And so I contacted the leaders. The 2 ladies in the back with the gray hair are the leaders of the food bank. And I wrote them in Estonian and said, hey, can I come with my friend who speaks English and translate for her? And they said, well, of course. And so we started volunteering there. And again, half of the crew doesn't speak English, half of the crew. So anyone who speaks Estonian, I can translate, or they are bilingual, or somehow we get communication through. Okay, that TV turned off, so I'm going to turn this way. Half of the ladies in this picture are Ukrainian. I didn't even know that. I didn't know that until they started talking to my friend here. Now, we're the same age, but she's petite and she's a bit shorter than me. And they thought that she was like 12. And they were like, aren't you afraid to be here alone? Aren't you afraid to live here? And she's like, I'm writing my master's thesis in business. So yeah, but that conversation happened from Russian, Estonian, Estonian, English, English, Estonian, Estonian, Russian. And that's when we found out that they were Ukrainian. And again, people who have left everything, lost everything, and serving others in more need than them. And so I love these women. And that was the first time. We had been volunteering there for 5 weeks, and that was the first time we'd all sat down and talked. And it was because I fell on the ice, and they wanted to make sure I was okay. So it was a blessing in disguise. Something else I'll mention here from this picture, we had these camps. We had several Ukrainians come to, there were Ukrainians in 4 of the camps. 4 of the 6 camps I worked this last summer had Ukrainians in them. This picture was taken when we had one of them baptized. One of the teenagers that was living in the church building took Christ on in baptism that day at camp, along with a Lithuanian counselor. And so people are coming to Christ. They're strengthening the church. I'll tell you a story of another camp. I don't have a picture. I went to a different camp. It's called Kindness Camp, or We Are Kind Together. And there were some Ukrainian kids that had come to this camp. They're picked by social workers. They come. They always have Russian translators. Now all the Russian speakers get a cool little headset and they get the translation in their ear, so they don't have to be segregated from the rest of the kids. They can sit wherever they want with whoever they want and hear the Russian in their ear, which is awesome because normally they're linguistically separated. And now they can sit wherever. It's beautiful. But there was one little boy. Oh, he was a character. He was probably 10, 9 maybe. And he was running all over the place. He was super active. He wanted to be around everybody, but he wouldn't let anyone touch him. He wanted to be close, but, at a distance. And we had been told as the staff, that he was Ukrainian. And one of his translators had come from Russia to come help the church in Estonia. And so, and he was a very, very kind, very gentle-spirited man, very good with the kids. And they became really good friends at the camp. And one night, this boy, more than anything, he just wanted to go on the boat. We had a lake, there was rowboats, but we had to wait in line. And since the guy from Russia was his overseeing adult, then it was okay to wait past curfew to let this kid go on the boat, which is fine. In Estonia, the sun doesn't set until 11:30 in the summer, so it was okay. But we're waiting for the boat to come back, and we're going in, and it's me, and it's an Estonian girl who speaks Russian, and then the Ukrainian, and the guy from Russia. And we're sitting there, and we're going on the boat, and I'm just blown away. And I turn to him, and I say, it's so amazing that you, as a Russian person, are coming here to Estonia, and you're helping this Ukrainian boy, and just bringing such joy to his life. And he goes, my grandfather was Ukrainian. It's in the family. They're intermarried. They're interrelated. And so when it's your distant relatives affected, you see it differently. You see it differently. And to see so many compassionate people. And at this food bank, when I'm taking people in at the door, and I'm getting their residency cards, I'm getting their passports, I'm getting whatever ID that they have, Russians fleeing from Russia, Ukrainians, Estonians all come to the same food bank. And then we just try to find whatever language that they need to be communicated in. Now, taking the ID card doesn't require speaking. I'm just putting in their name, putting in their number, giving them a bag. I can do that. It's what I can do. It's how I can love them. It's how I can share with them. And then I can offer them the Ukrainian Bibles that tell them about Jesus in their language. And so I know it might be easy to believe that I can't help because I don't speak the language, or I don't know how to serve, or I don't know how to do things. But I have no doubt that there are several Ukrainians even here in Texas. I wouldn't be surprised if there are a bunch in Lubbock, if anything, going to tech. And I just want to encourage you that there are so many ways that you can show Christ, and so many ways that you can serve, and it doesn't necessarily require you to speak their language. That's something that I think AIM did a good job of teaching us that in mission term and in mission term orientation, that you learn how to get around without understanding a word of what's being spoken to you. Dobre? Right? But to actually see that and to experience that and to know that God is working outside of me in ways that I may never know this side of heaven has been a growing opportunity for me. So that's what I have to share. I think we have a few minutes. If you have some general questions, if you have private questions, you can ask me later. But if you have some general ones, I'll take a few of those.
Can you say something in Estonian?
Tere, mulle meeldib, ma olen siia praegu. Ma olen väga õnnelik siia. Ma loodan, et teie on hea ajaga. Yeah. I'm very happy to be here, and I hope you all had a good time.